Welcome to the Knakal News Network. The Knakal News Network is brought to you by the Knakal Group, Cushman and Wakefield's #1 investment sales team in New York City.
Hi, John Hageman, sales team manager for Team Knakal at Cushman and Wakefield. Welcome to the Knakal News Network. Today I'm here with Bob Knakal, chairman of New York investment sales for Cushman. Bob, it seems like everybody wants to buy multifamily buildings. There's a lot of implications for the housing market, what's happening with rent regulation, affordable housing. Tell us what the latest is.
They're the buildings that are most predominant within the New York City marketplace. There are more multifamily buildings than any other type of property in the city. It's really remarkable to understand that that's the fact, given how complicated our rent regulation system is here, and it seems to be getting more and more adversarial towards property owners, and the regulations and rules make it more difficult to own and operate rent-regulated properties here in town.
Bob, what are some of the changes that are making it so difficult for owners and operators?
Well, Hags, a lot of the difficulties for owners of multifamily properties are understanding the rules and the guidelines. Unfortunately, the court makes decisions that tells you can't do something, but doesn't explain what the implications are if you do that, and don't tell you what you should be doing instead. The J51 rules in the Roberts case is a perfect example. That was a case that was decided years and years ago, and yet property owners today still don't have a clear direction in terms of what to do with apartments that become vacant in J51 buildings.
So Bob, how are most people dealing with that situation when they get a vacancy in a building that has a J51?
It really depends on their risk aversion. And some are taking more risk than others, but they're getting feedback from their attorney and then trying to make a decision in terms of what would be best moving forward.
So then in turn, Bob, what's that effect had on property values for multifamily buildings?
Remarkably, it hasn't had all that much effect. What it has done is it has limited the field of purchasers. The buyers that are willing to buy J51 buildings seem like they are still being very aggressive with what they're willing to pay. So it hasn't had a tremendous effect on value, but it has narrowed the field down and also narrowed down the field of folks who are willing to be very aggressive.
So Bob, affordable housing has always been a hot topic. It's one of the mayor's biggest objectives when he came into the office, is to establish more affordable housing. What's happening in that submarket?
Well, affordable housing is a very complicated issue. And I don't think anybody would argue that the city doesn't need more affordable housing. And I think the mayor's objective to try to get that housing is fantastic. Most elected officials refer to rent regulation as an affordable housing program. They almost always use affordable housing in the sentence when they talk about rent regulation and the rent guidelines. But the fact is, there is no means testing in the system. You don't know how affordable a unit is to somebody. You don't know if someone's making $10 million a year that's in a rent-regulated apartment. So the rent regulation system here is an inertia system. It is not an affordable housing system.
So Bob, then how do you create the new affordable housing?
Hags, the private sector has proven over time that they have a lot of dexterity. With the right incentives, the private sector will create all the affordable housing that's necessary. It's just a matter of finding the right balance of incentives to get private developers to go out and build buildings and create the affordable housing that's necessary. In summary, uncertainty within the rent regulation system is making it increasingly challenging for property owners to operate multifamily properties in New York City effectively. The recent Altman case has exacerbated the uncertainty, leaving owners questioning how to go about renting units that become vacant at or near threshold levels. Affordable housing is critically important to the future of New York City. Hopefully, the right package of incentives will be created to induce the private sector to create those units.
Thank you for joining us today. Tune in next week for another episode of the Knakal News Network.